Today, we're going to talk about a fascinating development in global finance. Did you know that China is becoming the lender of last resort for countries that are already heavily indebted to them? Let's dive in to find out more. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. China's Belt and Road Initiative has led them to provide millions of dollars in emergency loans to countries in crisis, from Sri Lanka to Turkey. With this, they've overtaken the United States to become one of the largest lenders in the world. But there's a catch. These loans are mostly given to low and middle income countries that are part of the BRI and already owe China huge debts. Aid Data is a US-based research institute. They found that China focuses on countries with geopolitical significance or abundant natural resources. That's the big one. Many of these countries have been borrowing from Beijing for years to fund infrastructure and other projects. The study suggests that China has developed a system of bailouts on the Belt and Road to help countries avoid default while still servicing their BRI debts. This has been a little bit interesting for the world, and I've seen some analysts talk about it. I've got some more to share here. And get this, China has effectively replaced the US and is quickly catching up with the IMF in bailing out indebted low and middle income countries. They're providing $240 billion in emergency financing in recent years. In 2021 alone, China gave $40 billion in such loans, while the IMF lent $68 billion to similar nations. This underscores China's growing status as an economic superpower. However, there's a downside. Many countries are struggling to repay their debts due to the slowing economy and rising interest rates. And this is where it becomes interesting. One reason, China's bailouts aren't cheap. China's central bank charges relatively high interest rates to countries like Pakistan, Laos, Nigeria, and Suriname. In fact, they charge 5% interest rates for emergency credit to middle-income countries in distress, compared to the 2% that the IMF rescue loans. Interestingly, the US Treasury charged almost the same interest rate as China, 4.8%, when they made rescue loans to middle-income countries in the 1990s through 2002. US officials have accused China of engaging in debt trap diplomacy, saddling countries with excessive debt for construction projects carried out by Chinese companies. And that's the thing, because we don't necessarily know what they're trying to achieve, and we can only speculate, right? What's more, China's loans are mainly given to middle-income countries that are important to their banking sector. Low-income countries receive little to no new money and instead are offered debt restructuring, according to the study. Beijing's is ultimately trying to rescue its own banks, and that's why it's got into the risky business of international bailout lending. Now, we don't know, and we're looking at this from afar, but I do find it interesting and think that what's coming here is a new way that we didn't necessarily see before. China didn't really do this before, and now today they seem to be moving to the forefront of it. Lastly, China's emergency lending is often in its own currency, the renminbi, furthering its efforts to limit reliance on the US dollar as the go-to global currency. When borrowing renminbi from China's central bank through these swap agreements that they have, indebted countries keep the renminbi in their central reserves while spending their dollars. It really is interesting, doesn't it? The way that they are able to do this, some say intentionally. So in summary, when we look at it, China is becoming the lender of last resort. They've got these high interest rates and they focus on middle income countries. According to some, their lending practices may pose risks for both the indebted nations and the global economy, as well as the fact that at the same time, their increasing influence in international finance can't be ignored. They're expanding beyond this. They've got the BRICS nations. They've got all these new alliances that they just didn't have even 10 years ago, and they're expanding rapidly. So all of this together, it is interesting, to say the least, and that's the end of that. I hope you appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.